Good morning and welcome, everyone. As you have heard from the first speaker, today's talk is about the cell. There is an axiomatic statement in theosophy which is as above, so below. Today we're going to look at so below, but remembering what we have just read, that above and below are one. They're not separate. Both the material essence and the spiritual essence constitute the two sides of the same coin. So keeping that in mind, we're going to look at the replica of what is above in the cell, which is in our physical bodies. Now, I will open today's talk with a statement from the Secret Doctrine. It is about stanza 3, number 3 in stanza 3. It says this: darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg. It is very suggestive, all of these statements in the Secret Doctrine. So, the world egg and this egg are very similar in its constitution to one another. This is the human egg. So, why should we study the cell? In her seminal article, HPB tells us, and I recommend that you all please read this article, Psychic and Noetic Action. It is tremendously important because not only does she explain our constitution, but she also tells us what the cell is, what the atoms are, and how we are to bring about change. Because when we talk about change, it does not start at the top, it starts at the bottom, here. We have to make our changes here first before we can influence all the other sheaths of the body. This is the second part of that article, Psychic and Noetic Action. And she explains about the divine mind. And we must also remember that the divine mind is at all times in charge because it is part of the higher triad. Let's see. Well, I don't seem to find it. Anyway, let me say it. I was going to read it, but I can't find the sentence in there. She tells us that the atoms constituting the cell are not physical. Not physical. What are they? They're psycho-spiritual. Remembering that this is connected to both the higher and the lower mind. That's why she explains these two constituent parts of the mind. Now, the lower is a personality, the one that is doing all the work in the lower aspect. The higher is the entity that goes from life to life. It's the individuality. One is the personality, the other one is in the individuality. In the Secret Doctrine 2, there is a passage about Buddhas. In that article, in that passage, we're told that that individuality is also a gift from the Dhyani Buddha, and that each one has a lineage on earth. So we are indeed divine beings. All of our constituent parts come from higher divine beings. Pitar fathers, Kumaras, the Agnishwata Pitris, give us our higher mind. They make us intelligent human beings. Our spiritual soul, Buddhi, comes from higher divine beings. Our spiritual essence comes from the logoic center, which gives this impulse at the core to get the progression going for that particular manvantara. So the cell then is circular. This is the designation of the logos. The cell is also circular. So the miniature part of us is an exact copy of the logoic circle. And as you can see, please circulate those for those who came late and didn't see it, that there is a boundary, but Mr. Judge Sale tells us that this is not real because the archetypal form is what the cell is built upon, the archetypal form. What is the archetypal form? These are the imprints from the Agnishwata Pitris at the beginning of the Manvantara that is also in the imperishable center of each human's heart.
Could you repeat that?
Repeat what? Okay. These archetypal forms are imprinted not only on the Akashic light, but in the imperishable center of each heart. There is a center in each heart. And when I go here, I am pointing to my physical heart. But remember, behind this, the real heart is not the physical heart, is the astral heart. And that astral heart has 7 different layers. Now, when you look at the cell, she tells us they're psycho-spiritual. And this is very important to understand, which means that we can impress our own internal aspects either from the lower mind or from the higher mind. What is the lower mind? External stimuli that is coming in. So, we have sensory perception. It is necessary because we need to learn about our world. So, one set, the light is coming in from the outside because remember, it's the light energy that is interpreted by the brain, colors, which is vibration, which is sound, which is number, okay? But what about the other set? The other set is imprinted and it is under the regulation of the higher mind in conjunction with the higher ego. So it is going from inside out. So we have a centripetal and a centrifugal force. And it is these 2 forces that equilibrate life. If the influence is coming from high above, we are noetic. If the influence is coming from inside out, outside in, it's phrenic. That's the terminology of the secret doctrine. Now, having said that, we will go to a statement from Pythagoras in regard to the cell. He says it this way: life is a changeless spirit in an ever-changing body. He is affirming that there is one part of us which is changeless, but this aspect, the lower aspect, is the one that is constantly changing. So the change cannot see change. It's only something that is unchanging that can perceive that change. That part is that higher aspect, the divine mind. Now, Mr. Judge Sell says the cell is an illusion, the ideal form within which the actual physical atoms made up of the lives arrange themselves. And what are these lives? Jivas. But look at the significance of this word. In the Hindu system, it is Jivatma. Now, that should really give us some indication as to the sacredness of this statement here, Jivatma. Jivas are those electrical sparks that constitute the movement of the universe, but they are also the lives that we breathe in and use them, and then we breathe out. All and every entity has this in it. I'm saying it because in this philosophy there is nothing that is inorganic. Everything has life in it because this is omniscient and omnipresent everywhere, and it is in everything. Excuse me. It is in everything. So we're going to transcribe this terminology to the cell's life. Great. The cell then is the smallest unit of the physical body that can survive life. Bits and pieces of it, when you look at the cell, can also have a life of its own, but all of the parts that constitute the cell contribute to its well-being. So it is a world, it is a globe that is the functional unit of the organic physical body of man. It looks physical because its constituent parts are in harmony with one another and they vibrate, but the vibration is not externally perceived. The statement is, if we could hear our heartbeat continuously, would that be beneficent to us, or would it disturb us? What about the activity of the cell? If we heard it, would it be pleasant or unpleasant? Would it be harmonious or disharmonious? Now these are things that we need to think about. Okay, the cell has a cell membrane. It has a nucleus, right? And in this, there's another center, which is called the nucleolus. In other words, the nucleus has a center of its own too. Now, all of the work is carried out in the cytoplasm because all of the organelles are in the cytoplasm. But without the nucleus of the cell, this work cannot be continued on. And the simile made by Mr. Judge is that each lodge constitutes this structure in itself also, that we need to remember to transfer the information given for everything into other aspects of our lives, that the unit cell and the unit ULT, unit theosophy, unit whatever, also works in this fashion. All of the constituent parts contribute to its welfare. What happens in the center? The center has that imperishable part in it. I'm sorry, I have to get something. I have it, and I didn't put one out there. I don't know why I didn't do it. I thought my nose and my throat was going to behave well, and it's not doing it. Sorry? I have it. Thank you. And I apologize. It's the sweater. I can't adjust to it very well. Okay. Yes. So, what happens in the center? This is the imperishable part. This is a very vast subject. I can only touch upon it in a very minute manner. So perhaps we'll do another one. But for general background, the center is this yellow part. It's the nucleus. And what is in there is the imperishable aspect. What is it? What is there? It's the DNA. And this is not biology, but we need to understand it because we're going to talk about bringing about change. What's the DNA? This is the genetic blueprint, and it has the life message of the Agnishwatha Pitris coded there. So the DNA is a 4-letter transcription. 4 letters. Only 4 letters are used. And that is why the statement is that it is very simple. The message itself is very simple. What we make of it is what changes it. And I'll just read it from here. It's AGCT. Those 4 letters constitute the message. Adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Now this is for the DNA. Now in the RNA, again 4 letters, but the T is exchanged for the U, which is uracil. The center, the nucleus, is the DNA, but the center of the center is the RNA. So the message is transcribed, it's sent out, and then in the cytoplasm, it transcribes all of the proteins in the physical body, which is the enzymes, which is the building blocks of life. So the genetic code is very simple, but look at its constitution. This is how the double helix looks, and there was one that opened and transcription was shown. How do we progress? Don't we progress this way? So the helix is that way too. It's double. It's like this. It's double. And in the middle, there are hydrogen molecules, which are the bonding part, and it breaks, the hydrogen breaks, and the double helix opens up, and each strand is transcribed. It gives another one, and the other side is transcribed, and a new one emerges. Now, this same process occurs where? In the egg. So the egg and the world egg and the cell are all alike. It's exactly the same model that we're looking at. Where is the world egg that I brought in today? The world egg didn't come in? Okay, and the globe, I brought it. It didn't get in the car?
The 8.5 by 11 paper?
No, the round globe.
Oh, the round globe. Yeah, it's still in the car.
Never mind then. So, I wanted to show you the globe and the longitudes and the latitudes on it. How did you think we discovered those? Because they really exist, but its archetype is in the astral world. If it didn't exist in the archetypal world, we could never be able to put it on the physical maps, but they do. And the reason I wanted to show you that is that when the cell division occurs in the egg or in the cell, because the cell reproduces itself too, the spindles appear. And the spindles are the ones where the energy is driving up and down to the poles, north and south poles. So the spindles are like this, and this is the equator on the globe. So I'm just saying that the cell really follows from that same model. And what did the teacher do? She traveled all over the world. What was she doing? She was putting these filaments in place for us. Anyway, so the jivas then is what constitutes these lives. And the atoms, which are psycho-spiritual, are influenced by what? by our thinking, by our emotions, the food that we put in our bodies. Because what are we doing with the food? It is transcribed into energy. And the energy then feeds the cells. And the atoms are arranged in the cell. So, the cell is very selective. Please, if you go away with something in your mind, just pick up a few words that are important. This permeability is going to be what? Our next capability. It's the sixth sense, isn't it? 6. Permeability. And she says we're going to call it something else when it comes about, but it's going to be our 6th sense. So the cell wall, or the cell boundary, is very selective. Why? Because it only allows certain molecules in and keeps the other ones out. Otherwise, we would all be diseased, because the skin is very selective too. It's not permeable. Its permeability is dependent on fatty cells, or macromolecules, I should say. And these will stretch out or condense and change the constitution of the permeability of the cell wall. And so that certain things can come in. It allows certain... I'm saying this because look how intelligent the cell is. It copies that intelligence from above, and it is a world on its own, and it functions as a unit, and it functions very well. Our body has been perfected. If it has disease, it's because we are causing it by not thinking correctly. It comes from ignorance, really, because we haven't learned our lessons yet. So the cell allows certain things in, and not everything that comes is allowed in. And the permeability shows intelligence. In the plant cell, another feature is added, and that is the chloroplasts. The plants take the light energy and they convert it into carbohydrates. We don't have that. We eat it instead. In the beginning of the 20th century, one of the intuitive scientists said this: each nucleus is a center of life, the seat of some intelligent activity, which we, being so far removed from it in the scale of intelligence, can only dimly appreciate. Because we really don't look at it, we don't scrutinize it, we do not know how intelligent our body really is. So, in the article Skin of the Earth, from which I had quoted one time before, please also read it. It is an occult story, but it really is not a story. Mr. Judge is giving us the real aspect of what Earth is. And he describes a scene where a light being is guiding all of the energies that constitute the movement of the skin of the earth. And even though it looks solid to us, he's telling us it isn't. There are diminutive beings constituting that skin. Well, the same process is really going here, because the earth's skin is also permeable, and it is very intelligent. It only allows things in and out according to the life of the earth. And in the Secret Doctrine, we are told that earth is alive. It unfolds from within out, just like the human being does. So we need to be protective to the environment as well as to our bodies. So in the cytoplasm, all of the activity of the earth takes place, as well as our activity in the cell's cytoplasm. Now, the Pythagoreans viewed the universe as a living mind, because they told us that deity geometrizes. And according to them, all of the atoms assembled by pure thought in number, conceived by the contemplator, constitutes this reality. Now, look, I'm going to read that sentence again. It isn't mine, I'm simply quoting it. All in the universe is made up of atoms which are psycho-spiritual, not physical, which are assembled by pure thought in number, conceived of by the contemplator. The one is the contemplator in the secret doctrine. 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. They call the contemplator the one, and primordial substance being undifferentiated substance, contemplator 1, primordial substance mind, the 2. The 3 they identified as the atoms, the jivas, and 4 was the nature of number, altogether comprising the decad, or the sacred decad of the manifested universe. So everything is constituted by number. Number indicates form, and we can change that internally with our thinking. Thus, the spiritual triad of Atma Buddhi Manas touches and informs the atoms or jivas which make up the 4 building blocks of the life and pervade the living body of man. So here's the key to the change. By such a divine current, with the specificity of proteins, determining the sequence in the DNA molecule is ultimately affected. So our thinking affects this imprint that we have in us. Who reveals the truth of the higher triad to the world penetrates this lower quaternary. So look at why this information was given to us in the secret doctrine and Isis Unveiled. It has its purpose and extends through the whole being like an electric line down from its apex. What are we talking about here? What is it called? The silver thread? And we are told in the philosophy that each life is threaded onto this silver thread as beads. Whatever is a spiritual that the ego, divine ego, can carry with it, because it cannot carry anything earthly. In other words, the perfected part of us is retained. Whatever we perfect in each life is retained and stored in that silver thread. So the archetypal atoms gathered together as number in an assemblage of units are the nursery of human consciousness and spiritual souls. Called imperishable jivas in the secret doctrine and in the writings, they provide the field wherein lies concealed the germ that will fall into generation and will become the spiritual potency in the DNA molecule. So our spiritual potency is in the DNA molecule. So by subtle change in our thinking, our actions and emotions also change, do they not? By understanding the truth, by living it, we affect internally this constitution. But the imperishable center, regardless of how humanity tries to degrade itself, it still retains its 5-point star shape. Do we not? Because there are a lot of humanity, or a large segment of humanity who do not understand what it is that they are doing, because they're ignorant of the fact. But nevertheless, that shape never changes. Why? Because it is imperishable. It has been imprinted by the Agnishwasa Pitris, and so our shape is this 5-pointed star. And it will retain that shape until the end of this Manvantara. So man, at this stage of evolution, can affect the assemblage of the codons, which are the units, and his inherited genetic substance, thereby putting himself in a microcosmic position analogous to that of the contemplator who thinks in number. So we can also learn to do the same, because it is the infinite principle of the forms which the atoms assume when they are gathered together and set into order. Individuals who develop noetic self-consciousness will no longer be successively reborn in the same lineage. In other words, we can change our inheritance. What is it now? We come to that same family repeatedly through ages because we want to perfect certain aspects of us and remove the impurities from the lineage so that the lineage becomes purer and purer. That then affects who is coming into the family unit. Purer souls are coming into it. But this order, this knowing order of ordering the number sequences, has a different aspect. It says that we will not be in fixed lineages anymore. The ones who realize this potential and work with it will then feel at the time of rebirth as to where that genetic continuity can be transmitted, because it is important, because it is analogous to the unchanging eternal spirit substance, which is what unmodified at its original beginning, but we modify it through usage and not always make it better. So, what is that thread? Well, if this thread is what is going from one life to the other, and it is the same thread that goes through the cells and gives it life, jiva, what does that tell us? As above, so below is not separate. It's one line coming down and informing the psycho-spiritual cells in my body. So even though we think this is just a body, it's a divine body, because that same thread that goes from life to life is giving it life on the physical plane, even though we don't perceive it, because its substance is not of this earth. It belongs to a higher level. And it is stated that on the 7th level of this substance only does these imperishable jivas work to build our cells for the first half of life. Now, I barely touched upon it, and it's really rudimentary, but I think I've run out of time. However, I'm going to read something to you from this stuff here. This is Mr. Judge's article. He says, they had come into a chamber of the earth, a room, and the light bearer is asking the disciple to follow him. It is time, said the sounds from all about the impassive being. That is the signal, we will go. And he turned away. I followed while he led me up to the building and through the gallery of telltale pictures, where still in the silence the faces changed and the soft music sounded. Turning, expecting still to see through the immaterial wall, I found it was impervious to the sight, and when the cord that drew me slackened, for my guide had stopped, stepping up to the wall, my outstretched fingers went through it, or rather disappeared within it, for they felt no sensation. Then the messenger's voice said, such is the skin of the earth to those who live below it. With these words, he walked on again through a door in a large room, into which I followed. Here a faint but oppressive smell of earth filled all the space, and standing just inside the doorway, now closed by a noiselessly moving door, I saw the whole place, save where we stood, was moving, as if the great globe were here seen revolving upon its axis, and all its motions felt. As I gazed, the surface of the revolving mass was seen to be covered with circling hosts of small creatures, whose movements caused the revolutions, and all at once it seemed as if the moving body became transparent, and within was filled with the same creatures. They were constantly coming from the surface and moving to the center along well-defined paths, filaments. Here was the whole globe represented in forcible miniature, and these creatures within and upon it, of their own nature, moved it, guided by some mysterious being, whose presence was only revealed by beams of light, nor could others see him, but his silent directions were carried out. So this is the skin of our earth, and this is the skin of the body, and the same movement with these lives on the interior of it takes place. So now we will open it for questions.